Alright, welcome back to All Cars, my friends. If you're new here, my name is John, and this is another Motorweek Retro Review reaction, and this week it is the 2005 Pontiac GTO. Now, I expect this video to probably do pretty well, and I expect quite a bit of engagement below. Leave your comments, because I think this is a polarizing car. The people I've talked to who've had them, craved them coming here, and owned them, absolutely loved them. It did everything they wanted it to do. It was everything they wanted it to be. But there's a tremendous number of people out there who are like, you know. And so we'll get more into that as we watch the video and see what they have to say. I've got some thoughts on it already, but as always, grab your beverage of choice. We've got fully caffeinated caffeine today, and get comfortable. Let's take a trip not too long ago, 20 years, to 2005 with the GTO.
Motorweek is made possible by Auto Value and Bumper to Bumper and TireRack.com.
American muscle cars are back in style. But while the Ford Mustang GT is hot, Pontiac's reborn GTO has been a showroom dud, mostly because of its slick but rather bland styling. But take the GTO to the racetrack and you quickly learn that you can't judge a book by its cover. The GTO is an awesome performer, made even more so for 2005 with a bigger, badder V8 and yes, a dose or two of visual flair.
So, I'm going to go back here just a little bit so you can actually see the actual car itself. Styling-wise, I always start off with that. I fall pretty solidly into the I don't like it. I mean, from the front wheels back, it could be an Oldsmobile. Honestly, an Oldsmobile Alero with a spoiler on the back. The front, it's both windswept, contemporary for, say, like the G6 that they were doing, but then it's got those nostrils in the hood. It's an odd combination of totally anonymous and a little too try hard. And as they said, and I'm glad they started with it, so I didn't have to be the one to say it, it didn't really sell well. When you're looking at the Mustang, or you think about a Camaro, something like that, and then you've got this. But that's also some of its strength. I alternate. I'll go ahead and tell you here. I alternate back then between I hate this car, what a waste, and in a half-hearted attempt by General Motors to bring something over here, and how brilliant, because it's a two-door sedan with incredible performance. So let's see what they say about it.
A visual flair. New cosmetic touches for the 2005 Pontiac GTO may not be enough to change its milquetoast image, but we do think the changes are right in line with the mission of this piece of American muscle. There's something to be said for a little subtlety in this world of megaphone exhaust tips and wild wings, as a car made for performance-minded adults shouldn't have to scream bad to the bone from every angle. For 2005, GM designers have added a more aggressive twin-scoop hood to the GTO's option list, and polished outlets for the new split dual exhaust poke out from a revised rear fascia. Unchanged are the GTO.
So let me get this straight. There's something to be said for not screaming you're bad to the bone, and then for this year, they've added slots in the hood because that's what the car needed. I disagree with that. This is an anonymous looking, it could be just a 6-cylinder sedan, and it's not even an overwhelmingly good looking one at that. And yeah, there's something to be said for having a sleeper, but I don't, the hood really bothers me. I don't like it. If you like it, I understand, more power to you. For me, they changed the one thing that probably didn't need to be changed.
GTO's smooth body lines inherited from the Australian-built Holden Monaro on which our car is based. The GTO rides on 17-inch aluminum wheels wearing 245/45 Z-rated Goodrich touring tires. They may be a bit small by the latest performance car standards, but what they lack in grip, they make up for in four-wheel drifting fun. Brake rotors are larger for 2005, 11.7 inches up front and 11.3 out back, and now sport red-painted calipers. The stance is low and muscular, not bulging at the seams like a weightlifter, but rather a powerful track runner in street clothes. You can sense the power is there, it's just not on display for everyone to see. But you need
Before they get onto the engine, because that's going to, what's coming, I think, is the best part of this car. I'm glad they also brought it up. This came from Australia, and this is another one of those cars that we see in magazines back then, and we see them around the world, and we wonder, why don't you just bring that here? And they did. And it wasn't a good seller. And I remember part of it, I hope they bring it up, is that as I recall, the trunk was like super shallow, something like that. This was a car for another market and another market's tastes. And they brought it here, Pontiac grill, and said, good enough. And I just, it's another example in my mind of cars that look great on paper overseas coming here, and they just don't fit our expectations for the car. And talking about the styling one more time, I understand what they're saying. There's something to be said for a sleeper. There's something to be said for not screaming from the rafters that I've got a muscle car. But American manufacturers, back in the, I think starting with the 49 Cadillac, the 50s, the 60s, and some of the 70s, we had expressive cars. They didn't have to scream at you, but at least they had some swagger. And I think that's what this car is missing, that in pursuit of aerodynamics, they massaged away the personality other than the performance it can do. Let's continue.
To open the hood or crack the throttle to discover this GTO secret, gone is last year's 5.7-liter small block, and instead is the new 6-liter LS2 V8 engine that powers the C6 Corvette. Horsepower bumps up 50 to an even 400 at a low 5,200 RPM, with 395 pound-feet of torque at 4,000. That's usable power, made more so in our car by a long-throw Tremec 6-speed manual gearbox, which we worked hard at our winter testing venue of Savannah's Roebling Road Raceway. Our test car ran from 0 to 60 in a swift 5.1 seconds and covered the full quarter mile in 13.5 seconds at 108 miles per hour. While only a few tenths improvement over last year, the LS2 V8 feels much more willing. The clutch and shifter work in unison flawlessly. A 4-speed Autotrans is available if you must. Cornering is by way of a fully independent suspension with rear semi-trailing arms, power rack and pinion steering, and electronic driving aids, ABS, and traction control. Pushed to the limits around Roebling's 8 high-speed turns, the LS2 V8's great power is put to good use. As in our earlier test, we found the GTO to be well-balanced and very predictable, with only modest amounts of push. The steering is a little on the slow side, but exhibits good weight and decent feel. Larger brakes also go a long way in quieting some earlier concerns. But the GTO is first and foremost a straight-line muscle car, and while it tackles this 2-mile road course gamely, it's just a bit out of its element. Body roll is moderate, and initial understeer can be quickly countered by liberal use of the throttle. However, after a few laps, the GTO's soft springs and 3,765-pound curb weight start to take their toll. Our testers' all-season touring tires were not able to keep up the pace. Grip was adequate, but heat and track conditions caused early wear, sending the GTO into the pits for an early retirement from track work.
So, a lot to unpack there. Looks like we're about to get into the interior. First off, got no problem with that engine. Got no problem with any of the numbers it's putting up. Would have been nice to actually compare it to just drop in that's a little faster or a little slower than a Mustang. You know, some other contemporary comparison right there, so you don't have to go look it up. And there's nothing wrong with the mechanicals. It is interesting that they went into the detail that this is a straight line machine, so it can perform, but when you get it on a track, it's not a race car. So that tells me it's not really a competitor, even though they mentioned it, to a Mustang. I can't think of what this would be competing with. So there's nothing wrong with the underpinnings here. It just sounds like, I don't know. It just sounds a little chunky and a little soft, even though I know it probably outperforms anything sitting in my driveway. But I don't think it matters, right? Because if you need a track machine, you're going to pick that Porsche or that Mitsubishi Evo they had sitting there, not this. But if you're using this literally as a daily driver, and you've got all the power, I think that what they're saying here is that the suspension tire setup and the brakes are going to be more than adequate for 99% of what you're going to need. That's my thought on it. Let's see the interior.
During the brief periods we weren't focused on using the drilled pedals, we could really appreciate the excellent, well-equipped cabin of the new GTO. Large, conjoined gauges are clearly visible past the fat steering wheel and are color matched to the exterior and interior hues. The uncluttered center stack holds controls for the standard AC and Blaupunk in-dash 6-disc CD stereo and curves into a console with plenty of small item storage. The leather-covered, high-bolstered seats are coddling yet supportive. Both driver and passenger get 8-way power. The two fixed rear buckets are 2+2 tight, suitable for adults only in a pinch. And you won't have to pinch penny.
Okay, so unfortunately they're not showing the trunk and what I remember about it. I have absolutely no problem with this interior. If I really nitpicked, I don't like the bucket seats in the back, but I understand why they did it. And I think that maybe on the gauges, the fonts are a little small, but that's it. Yes, if you've been a fan of this channel, you're about to hear me say it, I like this Pontiac's interior. They did away with the cheapness. They did away with those horrible gray controls that look like they came from, Tinker Tots. And they ended up with what looks like a business suit, right? A mature car. I really like this interior. Again, I could probably nitpick a few things, but I'm not going to. I have no problems with that interior overall.
All your life to enter the new GTO generation either. Base price for the 2005 edition is $32,495. That's over $11,000 less than a Corvette and more than $17,000 less than the Cadillac CTS-V that also uses the LS2 V8. To GTO critics, we say, don't forget that the original was little more than a big motor inside stealth bodywork. Still, the improved 2005 Pontiac GTO is making progress. And with a few more tweaks, it just might turn its awesome performance into impressive sales.
Interesting how they finished that up with a comparison against, the CTS-V or the Corvette. It's not all engine. And I really wish they'd had more comparison with the Mustang. I really do, because I think that's more what this was aimed for. The fact is, I finished this video exactly the way I started it. The individual pieces I like. There was a time when I liked, mid-sized cars with 2 doors. More power was always good. I like the interior. It looks comfortable. It does car things with a big engine. And that's basically what people I've talked to with these in the past, I haven't seen one forever, loved it. That it was a car, but with power, right? It wasn't a G6. It could do G6 things. It just was better. But it was the biggest missed opportunity, one of the biggest missed opportunities for GM, because there's nothing here that doesn't say success, right? Except they didn't invest in it. They didn't invest in the bodywork and making it a little more distinctive, and they ended up with something that was anonymous, beyond anonymous. I don't know how to put it. It is one of the most boring looking cars out there. You know, the corporate Pontiac front end just kind of slapped on it. Small little tail lights. There's no presence to the rear, and down the sides, it could have been any GM corporate Oldsmobile Pontiac car. It has no zing to it. But when you're sitting behind the driver's seat, it doesn't really matter, and it has a lot of power on tap for less money. And that's what I think I've always heard, and that's always been my impression. I don't hate the exterior. I can't see looking out in my driveway and thinking, man, I am proud to have that. What a sexy beast. It's ew. No, it's not ugly. It's just nothing. But the people who like them, you're getting Corvette power, BMW performance at the price of a Pontiac. That $32,000 still seems kind of high to me, but heck of a car. Let me know what you think below, guys. Like I said at the beginning, I think this is going to be a little polarizing. You love it or you hate it, and so I really would like to hear from you what your thoughts are, and if you were one of those few people who actually owned one. Thanks for being here, guys.